I'm Tracy Rigdon, and this is the Contrast Project Lounge podcast. Often random, always relevant, always real, and practically nothing is off limits. Are you ready for this? Let's do it. Welcome back, guys. Well, today, we're not going to be selling a miracle or anything like that. We're talking about rebuilds, personal rebuilds. You know, the kind you earn with a little bit of scar tissue. Yahweh Kent has done it in the hard way. Cancer that refused to be a tidy lesson, a divorce that blew up the script, selling everything in his 50s, then becoming a dad again at 55. God bless you. Throw in some heart issues and sobriety, and you get a man who's learned alignment by bleeding it out. Yahweh hosts the Aligned AF, Real Talk for Evolving Soul. Yahweh, how you doing, buddy? Welcome back.
I'm doing great, Tracy. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. For those that will be viewing this, Yahweh is also, like I mentioned, a podcaster and very active in the podcasting community and in his own right, a Reiki master. Now, when did really the term alignment stop being just a slogan and become something measurable, a measurable practice in your life? What were some of the first metrics that you tracked?
Yeah. That's a good question because it's probably one of those questions that people who do what I do have. Some of them have these aha moments, and some of them, have no friggin' idea, and they just kind of develop slowly. For me, it's one of those things where I've always been the kind of person that is searching for something, searching for answers, asking the big questions like where did we come from, why are we here, that kind of stuff. And I tried digging into religion as a younger man. I tried every church you could possibly think of, and nothing was really connecting for me.
You're not alone there.
Yeah. And it's funny because I spent a lot of years praying like everybody prays and believing in the God that everybody believed in, the old dude with the beard sitting in a throne up in the sky. And it got to the point where it wasn't making sense to me because I'm also a science kid. I grew up really strong math science background. Some of my heroes were Einstein and Carl Sagan and, that kind of stuff. And so to me, there had to be something different. It couldn't just be some magical dude. So I've spent most of my life in search of answers for stuff like that. And, you mentioned divorce. I've actually been through 2 divorces. And, I loved my life at the time. I love all my kids. I have 4 sons altogether, but 3 of them are grown. And, I did my job. I worked every day. I was doing 60, 70 hours a week for a big part of my life. I was in retail management and training. One thing I've always had an issue with is being told what to do. So I've always been the boss. I always found a way to be in charge, But I got to the point in my early 50s where I had been divorced for a number of years. My 3 boys were all grown and out of the house. And I started getting into metaphysical stuff, started digging into spirituality, started working with channeling and meditation and really digging in. I mean, I had gotten to the point where every single day I was looking forward to my meditation time and really the connection that I was having with the universe as a whole and the answers that were coming to me just out of my own mind and out of my own imagination instead of going off and looking for them in a book at the library or later on in life and on the internet. I was finding more answers just by meditating, just by doing that kind of work on myself. And I decided, I had a friend who basically cured herself of cancer by using Reiki, and she had become a Reiki master. And so I started studying Reiki under her. And for those that don't know, Reiki is a Japanese energy system. It literally stands for Universal Life Force Energy. And it was developed by a doctor/Buddhist monk named Mikao Usui right around the turn of the century, 1900s. I keep forgetting we've been through another century since then. And and that kind of shifted my meditation practice to something even deeper. And I started, working with people and offering Reiki as services. And it wasn't by any stretch of the imagination a full time job or anything like that, but it was something that I truly enjoyed. And then I reached a point where I was working for Star. I was a manager trainer for Starbucks in a very busy area in Western Massachusetts. And I just had reached a point where I just did not enjoy it anymore. I would go to work. I love people, I no problem with customers and stuff. But I had gotten to the point where I just didn't want to deal with corporate anymore, the whole corporate mentality. And Starbucks, don't get me wrong, they do a pretty good job at taking good care of their people. But when you're at management level, they don't really back you up all the time. And I got fed up and I quit. I told them I couldn't do it anymore. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to do that. So I had enough money in the bank. I was going to take some time off and I did. I took some time off. I tried to figure out what I was going to do. I did a little bit of traveling. I had a friend who was moving to New Mexico and she asked me to go on the road trip since I was free. So I was like, yeah, let's do that. And halfway out, we stopped in Kansas City. I had a friend that I knew online who I'd met on Facebook. And she said, come stay with us for a day. I'll show you the city. You can hang out, get drunk, and then go the next day. So I said, well, that sounds great. So I got here and I got to Kansas City and I just fell in love with the area. I'm not a city guy, but Kansas City was very, very different for me. And what really shifted for me was we took a little trip. There's this little place called Unity Village, which is it's the birthplace of the Unity religious movement.
Mhm.
And the campus is just friggin' amazing. It's just beautiful. And when I stepped out of a vehicle and just took one step on the grounds, this energy flew through me that told me I was home. So we finished the New Mexico trip. I got back home and found myself homesick for this place that I had never lived.
Right.
Um,
Last night we were talking, I was talking with a guest, and she was saying that her and my co-host, they're both writers, and my co-host is also a musician and writes
yep,
music and books.
yep,
And they both agreed and said that they didn't just write stuff, or I didn't, their metaphor was that I received it. I
yep,
received it.
yep.
And just like you received that feeling of home.
Exactly right. Exactly right. There was a connection there. I believe that everything is energy, including our thoughts and our emotions. And there was a connection there.
Mhm.
And I had a friend, my same friend who we stayed with said, I've already talked to my husband. If you want to come out here, you can stay with us for as long as you need. And that day I said, screw it. And I literally took pictures of all of my furniture, put it up on Facebook Marketplace and started selling my shit. And within 3 months, my house was empty except for my television, which I wanted to keep because it was fairly new. And that was literally the only piece of furniture I had left. And one dresser to keep my clothes in. And then, personal stuff. And I had a Dodge Dakota and I packed that sucker as full as it could possibly get. And I drove 1,400 miles with, some money in the bank and no idea what I really was going to end up doing. But I knew that I wanted to be part of a spiritual community. And I knew that I wanted to just completely change my life. I knew I didn't
That's
want to do
taking a leap.
retail. It was a serious leap because I had no idea. I had no clue. And I got out here and within 2 weeks, I had a job at Unity Village at the coffee shop, which sold Starbucks coffee.
Yeah, yeah.
When they found out that I had run a Starbucks, they were like, "You're hired." End of conversation. You're hired. And it was a
And that's
cute little
something.
coffee shop, metaphysical stuff around, and it was on campus there, and it was just a beautiful place to work. And it wasn't anything that was going to make me a living because I was only working 3 or 4 days a week. But I got to work in a place that I somehow knew I was drawn to. And excuse me a second. And then one day I was working and this young blonde walked into the store. And I said, well, I'm going to go talk to her.
Of course.
And about 40 minutes later, she left. And I turned around and the two women I was working with looked at me and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I said, my exact words were, "I have no fucking idea what just happened to me. I have no idea." And we just hit it off. Her name's Alara, and we were both very clear that we were not looking for a relationship. I had, just moved out there. I didn't know what I wanted to do. She was fairly recently divorced, and she was going through her own spiritual turmoil at the time.
Sure.
But we started hanging out. We started, doing energy work together. We started, having lunch and going to events and things like that, and just being friends and just, spending time with each other. And I did a lot of holding space for her, and really, we just kind of hit it off. And after, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, the universe said, "All right, that's enough of that shit. You guys are supposed to be together." And
Yeah.
we accepted it. It was literally a movie moment. There was the little coffee shop that I was working in had open mic night once a month. And she had said, "I'm going to open mic later. Are you going to be there?" And I said, "Well, I don't have to work it, but yeah, I'll go." So I was going to meet her there. And I walked in and I saw her literally across the room, and everything around me just froze. And it was just this beeline for her, and I started walking slowly towards her, and the group that was at the mic was playing an ethereal version of "In the Air Tonight" by Phil Collins. And I'm walking towards her, and I'm listening to this music, and I stopped, and I looked at a friend of mine, and I said, "Is that In the Air Tonight?" He goes, "Yeah, it's freaking amazing." And then I started walking towards her, and she looked at me and said, "What is happening?" And I was like, "I don't know." And from that night on, that was it. We were done. We were in love. She's significantly younger than me, and she didn't have any kids, and she wanted to have kids. And I was like, "Well, geez, my I've been done for 18 years, and I'm at that time I was 52." And I was like, "Are you okay? Well, if we're going to do this, we need to do it soon because I don't know how much time I got." But we didn't hesitate for a second. We got together, we got married, we had this amazing little boy named Orion, and it's just been a freaking blessing. It's just really been incredible.
That's a wonderful story. It really is. And and you tell it with such passion too. It's like, this whole thing, just landed. You received it.
Yeah.
This whole thing fell on the both of you and you knew it.
Yep. Yep. And that's the thing. So many people don't follow through with stuff because it sounds crazy.
Hmm.
How many guys in their 50s? Actually, there's a lot of guys in their 50s that would love to have a 30-year-old blonde
Well,
who
yeah.
used to be a cheerleader, Chiefs cheerleader, and now teaches yoga. Yeah, we would like that. Thank you very much.
You mentioned being in her 30s. One of my other co-hosts, Charles, he's ish, and he recently was approached by a 30-year-old young lady, and admittedly by him, lovely, friendly, all that kind of stuff. And he was asking Jim and I, well, what should I do, man? She's only 30. I'm like, 30, I
Seriously.
think she's old enough.
Yeah. And you never know.
I mean,
You
Jesus, it's not like you guys are that far apart.
No, no, no. If you pushed it back 15 years, it would be terrible. But where you're at right now, it's fine, man.
Sure,
It's
sure.
fine. And I got to tell you, this has been the most healing relationship I've ever been in my life.
That's beautiful.
We each do our work every single day, and it's not perfect. And we have our fights. We even separated for a few months because things were just ridiculously falling apart. I was still drinking at the time, and
Well, there's your sign right there.
yeah, 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 yeah. And it was just not good anymore. But we never gave up on being a family, and we never gave up on doing our work.
Right.
And we finally got to the point where we were both like, "Yes, this is where I belong. I belong with you."
That's excellent. And you had mentioned, sobriety, and you were drinking at the time, and you had some, you and your wife had to separate and everything. And I said, well, there's your sign. And for those of for those that are watching and listening, I'll tell you that Yahweh and I, not only are we in common as podcasters and members of a group, a Riverside group online, but I too am in sobriety, and I can tell you that looking back, a lot of the misgivings, miscomings, whatever you want to call it, the pitfalls in my adult life can be definitely traced back to my alcohol abuse.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Yeah.
That aside, Yahweh, you had mentioned that you've got to have this wonderful little son now, and you became a father, like you said, at 55. Now, becoming a dad at 55, again, how did you rebuild play, patience, and presence with a very different body and bandwidth?
Yeah. It's definitely different than it was when I was in my 20s. I tell people that becoming a dad in your 50s, you spend a lot more time down on the floor playing, mostly because it's harder to get off the floor.
Yeah.
But the truth is, the priorities change. You look back at you know what you were like as a dad or as a person, as a man, and you start to assess things, and you start to say, you start to see those areas that you could have been a little bit better. You could have been a little bit
Sure.
different. And you have to do a lot of forgiving of yourself, because it can send you down that whirlpool, man. It can send you spiraling out of control if you start holding a lot of self-judgment. So you see what you did, you see what you could have done differently, you forgive yourself for your mistakes, and you encourage yourself to be better. And so now I'm, like, I spend more time with my son. I'm a stay-home dad now that I'm retired. I'm with him every single day. And I get him up, I get him breakfast, I get him to school, I pick him up, I spend time with him, and I encourage him to really embrace the things that he's interested in. And I don't try to push him to do things that I think he's supposed to do. I
Yeah.
don't want to make him into something that I think he's supposed to be. I want him to become what he knows he's supposed to be. And that's really a big difference from being a dad at my age in 2025 versus being a dad in his 20s in, the late 80s, early 90s, And so there's a world of difference. And honestly, I think parenthood, they used to say youth is wasted on the young. I think parenthood is wasted on the young, because
That's a good point.
you can barely take care of yourself. And now you've got a human being that counts on you for absolutely everything.
Mm-hmm.
And again, to the folks out there that are young and have kids, God bless you. Do the best you can, because that's all you can do. But remember that you can't force your kids to become something that they're not supposed to be. And that's really a big one for me.
Yeah. Now you said, becoming more aligned and more aware of your inner self, and becoming a father again, and settling down and all that stuff. Now, when you talk about your practice of Reiki and
Yep.
channeling,
Yep.
how do you set, those, I guess, ethical guardrails, scent, scope, referrals, and
Yeah.
what's your tell, for the energy? I mean, how do you approach?
Right. Well, the first thing that I try to make clear to anybody, any client or anybody that's interested, or anybody that's working with somebody else who offers any of the things that I offer, is trust is the number one key. Trust. If you don't trust the person and the person doesn't trust you, because it goes both ways, then you just need to get the heck out of that. No love loss. It's nobody's fault. It just happens. I encourage people to trust their feelings. When I have a potential client, I always have an initial assessment. And that assessment is for them as much as it's for me. It's for them to see if there is an energetic resonance between the two of us where they understand where I'm coming from and I understand what exactly they're looking for and if working together is going to be a good idea. I also want to remind people that there's no such thing. This is me talking. There's no such thing as a healer. Okay. No human being has the ability to heal you of anything. You have the ability to accept the energy that can heal your body. Now, that being said, there are people that can guide you through this. And that's what Reiki is all about. I don't have any energy in me that you don't have in you. All that Reiki is, I look at a Reiki practitioner kind of like a conduit. Okay. We connect the energy, we help it flow, and you may have some misalignments in your chakras or some blockages energetically. My job is to help you clear those blocks so that the energy starts flowing again, so that it actually has the ability to do what it's supposed to do inside your body. But I don't do any healing of any kind.
That makes total sense. That makes total sense. I mean, in most therapeutic practices outside of the type of practice that you do, many of them basically say the same thing. If you're not, let's say you're going to a marriage counselor or, any other type of counseling session. Well, one thing just about all of them recommend is journaling.
Yeah.
And then seeking, your inner truth. What am I doing wrong? What can I do right? What have I done right?
Right. Right.
And how can I channel that energy to move forward in a more productive life?
Yep. And to your point, when you start talking about, you
Oh,
reminded me
yeah,
that
go ahead.
you were talking about therapy, and the one of the big things, because I've been in therapy. Shit, I'll probably be in it again soon. One thing that's really key is if you're not willing to do the work, nothing's going to happen. And the same thing is true of energy work. If you're not willing to do the work, then none of it is going to work for you. And all I do as a Reiki practitioner or as a truth coach or as a channel, all I do is remind you of tools that are there, help you shift some stuff out of the way. That's all I do. Everything else is up to you. It's like having a gym membership. You can get the card and you can pay the monthly fee, but if you don't get your ass to the building and actually start working on those
Hmm.
machines, nothing's going to happen for you.
Nothing's going to happen. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Now, dealing with the darkness without spiraling, give us somewhat of a media diet, an outrage protocol or a service act that converts anger into traction.
Yeah, one of the key takeaways for me is remembering my past without allowing it to affect my present. I look at some of the darkest moments of my life, and for a lot of people it's really easy to spiral into those feelings again.
Sure.
They show up, something triggers you, you hear a familiar song, or sometimes it's just an aroma, something will trigger you, and you'll start to remember a dark, chaotic moment of your life, and then you'll spiral into it. And so for me, the practice was allowing those things, not ignoring them. I don't believe in the whole let it go philosophy. I don't think that letting it go is healthy. What I think is healthy is addressing it, accepting it, and learning a better way to deal with it. And so for me, I look at those dark moments of my life, whether it's finding out my wife cheated on me or going through the divorce or having cancer when I was 28 years old. I had to have a lung removed. I thought I was probably going to die. I mean, that was the 90s, and the technology wasn't what it is now, but yet I
And yet here
survived.
you are.
Yet here I am, exactly right. And I've been mostly cancer free for 35 years. I've got to go in a couple of weeks. I've got to go get a little spot on my skin on my face removed. But it's not the kind of thing that could kill you. Quite honestly, cancer is not going to be what takes me out. I know that. I am positive of it. But then I had, you know My wife was 6 months pregnant, and all of a sudden, I dropped on the bathroom floor one day and had to go to the emergency room, and they found out I had to have a pacemaker right then and there. My
Wow.
heart had given out. And so I look at those moments, and it'd be really easy for me to just say, "Oh, screw this. The world's out to get me," yada, yada, yada. And instead, I look at how much my life has shifted, how I have gotten through every single one of those moments. And I know it's made me stronger, and I know I can do it again. And so I
Absolutely.
practice that every single day. I practice it every opportunity I get to say, I am stronger than I've ever been. And I may have a 63-year-old body, but my soul is eternal.
There you go. Hey, like you say, not letting it go, but facing it head on. And one of the things I found helpful in my daily life is actually, first of all, I'm grateful to be able to put my feet on the floor when I get out of bed in the morning
Yeah.
without it hurting too much. But I have a gratitude list that
Well,
I
that's a
work
great
on.
idea.
I do a gratitude list regularly. I don't necessarily do it every day, but sometimes, when I have a quiet moment, what am I grateful for? Could be 2 things, it could be 5, it could be 10 or 20,
Yeah.
but it's always
That is a
good.
great idea. I actually had a similar practice. I used to, anytime I drove, this was actually just before I moved out here, I got in the habit of turning off the radio and listing things that I was grateful for in my life. And when I first started doing it, I'd get 4, 5, 6 things, and then I'd stop and I go, okay, so now what do I do? And I had the idea that, well, okay, repeat them. And so I would literally drive around, no radio, and I would just repeat the things that I was grateful for. And as I progressed, I found that I was adding more and more things, or I'd remember something from a past that I knew was a good moment. And it got to the point where driving 1,400 miles, I did it with no sounds, no music, no audible, no stories, nothing. I just listed gratitude all the way from Massachusetts to
That's
Kansas City.
amazing.
And it was such a joyful habit that I didn't know what to do the first time I got in a vehicle with Alara and she turned the radio on. I was like, wait.
Wait a minute.
This is kind of
I don't do that.
this is loud. There's too much noise.
Well, I'm kind of when I drive, more often than not, I don't have the radio on either. Even my last truck, but you said you had a S10. I had an S10 that was pretty tricked out, nice stereo and all that stuff, and the rims, and it was dropped a little bit. It was a sweet little truck, and again, it had a really nice stereo in it. Hands free, that Bluetooth for my phone and all that shit.
Yeah, sure.
And when I drove around that thing, I never had the stereo on.
Yeah,
I'm talking to myself, when you talk to yourself, I always say you got a captive audience.
you do. You do. And nobody likes the sound of my own voice better than me.
Well, listen, Yahweh, I had a fabulous conversation with you today. We covered a lot of ground. I'm sure we could cover plenty more the next
Easily,
time
my
you
friend.
come on the show.
Okay. No
Before we
pressure.
go, yeah. Before we go, you got any closing thoughts for us?
Just, I appreciate being on this side of the mic for a change. If I can put out a gratuitous plug, hey, everybody who loves this show, check out mine, Aligned AF, Real Talk with the Evolving Soul. It's
There we go.
available on all the major stations, including YouTube.
There you go. And it's easy to remember because when you're looking behind Yahweh there on the wall, it says AF.
BAF. One of my sisters from another mister got me that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, we'll see you on the next time around then.
All right, Tracy, I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Peace. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Contrast Project Lounge podcast. Big thanks to our guests, and big thanks to you for tuning in. You can find us on all of the social media channels, wherever you are. If you like what you heard, drop us a line in the comments section below, like, share, and smash all the subscribe buttons. New episodes drop weekly. Until then, take care of yourself and take care of your people. Peace.